Can I turn it over to Ryan now for the presentation?
Great. Thank you for introducing me. I really appreciate that.
You're
So I'm going to share the presentation. So basically, I'm going to kind of discuss broadly what Free Geek does, but also just kind of like where I'm coming from at it and why the work that Free Geek does is of interest to me and why I've kind of spent my time doing it. So, you've gotten kind of a quick recap, but like Free Geek Toronto, we've been around for about a decade. And the basic idea of what we do is we focus on, oh, did that not go? Can everyone still see the screen? No?
No, it's not shared anymore.
Okay, hold on. This might be an issue with using something. Okay, let's try this one. Can we see this one now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. Yeah, we basically focus on trying to reuse unwanted technology to extend the life of that, to lessen the environmental impact, but also to kind of help build up the access to technology within the city. We are part of what's the Free Geek movement, which was started in Portland, Oregon. So that's the main, that's the Free Geek without a locale attached to it, is the one in Portland. All the rest of them have the other ones. So like the big ones are in Vancouver, Chicago, Minneapolis, and Arkansas. And there are a couple other organizations. The Free and Free Geek kind of comes from the idea of using free and open source software, which we'll kind of come back to a couple of times. And so it's kind of like focusing on that, on, having technology be something that is, that can really open up the possibilities of having the freedom to choose what you want to do with your technology and also how you access it and how you do stuff with it. So that's kind of where it starts. And we kind of begin the presentation and everywhere else, we talk a lot about the digital divide. And this is just a kind of a generic, from Wikipedia definition of that. But it really it does talk about this like kind of uneven access. And one of the big things that the pandemic has kind of highlighted is how that divide, how lacking access to infrastructure or to digital technology or some kind of that stuff is a real challenge and a problem. In Canada, we do like the penetration of like internet connectivity and all kinds of access to devices and stuff is really high, which means that when people don't have access, it becomes even more. It's a bigger issue because the assumption of access is there. The big example is people, they might have the ability to access the internet on their phones or from their mobile devices, but if they need to do something really true, they need to have connectivity. They need to go somewhere where they can get access to public Wi-Fi. And when all the places that had those public Wi-Fi are gone because of closures or lockdowns, how do people continue to live their life and have access to it? So we really try to, focus it not so much as a binary problem of having it, because there are levels to it. People can have phones which have, a certain level of connectivity, but can you write resumes? Can you write school reports on a tablet or a phone? You can, but it's difficult. Can you get access to that connectivity? Do you have access to the people who can train you or give you the skills to do something with digital technology beyond, being a consumer, moving from that place of being a consumer to being a producer or, creator, or using it to kind of build capacity and stuff like that. And so it's really trying to look at like how to become more inclusive with technology. And, the Ontario government in 2017 defined digital inclusion in a very specific way, where it was it's an intervention to seek to increase access, remove barriers, develop skills, empower people who might otherwise be marginalized and excluded from design and use of digital technologies. And while Free Geek, we're small, not for profit. Like, if I want to kind of give you a size of it, we have, pre-pandemic, we were at about 30 to 50 active volunteers, give or take, and we had about a core staff and volunteers of about 10 to 12. So we're not like a huge bustling organization. We're just it's a combination of people trying to do as much as they can. And so when we look at kind of like the 5 things that make digital inclusion important, we kind of really focus in on the second one there, the internet-enabled devices that meet the needs of the user. And that key piece of like, it's an internet-enabled device that meets the needs of the user. That's what's most important, because there are lots of hack labs or lots of other groups that come together to try and just kind of reclaim old technology, retro gaming, and all that kind of stuff that are really just more hobby focused. What Free Geek's mission is to use that same technology, but in a way that will meet the needs of the users. And when people need basic access to things, then we have to make sure that those devices can do that. And to say that we don't do the other 5 things, it would be a lie. But it's not as much our focus, because part of what we're doing, we have people who come in and work with us, volunteer and stuff, and they learn, so they're building up their digital literacy training. We have people coming in and asking us questions, and so we do give technical support as much as we can, and we have beyond just kind of like the offering of a simple warranty. But we also have to we also are constricted by our capacity. We can't do everything, we can't be everything to everyone, so we're really trying to focus on what it is. And this idea of the focusing on the devices really kind of hits the two challenges of like increasing access, but also kind of considering and being more aware of the environmental impacts of our technology. So for example, according to the outgoing Ontario Electronic Stewardship, about 50,000 tons of e-waste are collected in Ontario every year. The majority of that e-waste is recycled. It's straight recycling. And there's a variety of reasons why that happens. Some of it just might be too old. Some of it might be people concerns about, data security, or, things like that. And so they just kind of it just gets destroyed. And there's a big, people are really important to that. But reuse is the most proactive way to decrease the impact, because basically what you're doing is you're saying, no, we can, bypass someone buying a new device by reusing a completely good device to continue to extending its life and continuing to do so. And that's what we do at Free Geek. And the primary way we do so is we work with free and open source software. So we install Linux GNU operating systems on some of our older technology, because those operating systems use less resources. They aren't reliant on a license that might be obsolete at a certain point because it's no longer being supported by the company that built it and stuff like that. And that's where the power comes in. So we use the operating system that we usually install is Linux Mint. It's based off of Ubuntu, which is a derivative of Debian. And I'm more than happy to talk about that, but that's the open source structures. But we picked that one because it's well supported, it's stable, but it also, to be very frank, it looks like other operating systems out there, so that when people are moving from what they know to a new system, and maybe they're not the most technologically savvy, if it looks similar and they can kind of navigate it and find out what they need to do with it on their own, then that's a successful system. So that's why we're using Linux Mint. And it does have some, some drawbacks and stuff like that, as we just saw that my full screen share just kind of went away because I'm using Linux Mint, and I'm not sure what happened with that. But it's a lot of it, and like to the point where at Free Geek we basically run the entire organization using open source software, and so and we try and use it as much as we can. And even when we have the ability to recover the proprietary software, something like that, we're installing LibreOffice, Firefox, and VLC media player on those computers, because we want to kind of open people's eyes to the alternatives to kind of like do that and kind of engage them in this process, that they can, there are other alternatives to kind of what they've kind of been shown before. And this just kind of give you an idea of like, when we talk about access technology with regards to Free Geek, this is what we're looking at. We're talking about 1,000 computers refurbished over the last 5 years, but 50% of them sold for under $200, because that $200 benchmark is kind of like, especially for a laptop, is it's like affordable, it's usable, it's something that we can be sustainable with, but also is within the price range of a lot of people. And we try to donate as much as we can. So we've donated 60 computers over the last 2 years, but that's just pure donation. So it doesn't look like that much when you consider 1,000 to 2. But if you think 500 of the computers that are not considered part of the donation were sold for under $200, and in that, like, we have a very small hardware grant program that does deeply discounted computers, and we sell, like, when we have them, like, we sell Core 2 Duo desktops with small hard drives that are running Linux Mint that are perfectly functional for going online for $20-$30. You can't, like, that's like almost within everybody's price range, but there are still people who get left out. And so we're trying to, over time, we keep trying to expand what we're able to do, but we also want to make sure that we're doing it in a sustainable way, because we are a social enterprise. We are trying to use our, the business and the revenue generation to make ourselves sustainable, to be able to do the work we do. And this work, it's not building code. It's not, it's not like bringing up an 80s Apple computer back to life. It's bringing out a 7 or 8 year old laptop or desktop back to life, or in the case of a Core 2 Duo, an 11-year-old computer, back to reusability through using free and open source software. And but it's very, like, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think it was rewarding and worthwhile. And again, it just kind of, it gets reiterated over and over again. And one of the ways we find this is by doing it with others. And so you see here, like, these are, either local organizations or other organizations within Ontario, or other ones within the Free Geek universe, or one in Athens, Georgia. That these are organizations that we've kind of reached out to, and we've had conversations with, and talked and shared things with, and kind of really try to spurn that idea that you can't do everything together. If you share ideas and you share what's working, what's not working, and then like a good open source project, branch it and then do it so that if it's your locale, that's the best way to go about doing things. And these ones are all like refurbishers, like charitable or not-for-profit refurbishers, but we also try to work with, like, the other parts of digital inclusion. So Toronto FreeNet's been around even longer than we have, and they were instrumental in starting, in helping support Free Geek when it started, and they continue to do so now. And it's something that they still have dial-up internet that's, like, I think $5 a month or something like that. So if people just need internet emails, it's something that's possible. And then Mesh Toronto, which I know is a project that came out of Civic Tech Toronto, and like I think they were here a couple of weeks ago or a couple hack nights ago talking about their big project. So I won't talk. I don't pretend to know everything about that one, but what they're doing is just phenomenal, and it kind of speaks to it. And what really, like, the lessons I've taken away, like, there are specifics that we can talk about, but really when you're talking about trying to look at how to build things, and I don't think this should come as a shock to anybody who's been around for Civic Tech for a while. It's like, if you build a community and you learn and teach, offer opportunities, and have a positive attitude, there's a lot that can get done. And the big piece for us right now is this idea of the right to repair, because our existence and our ability to do the good that we're able to do in the world, both from an environmental and from a social point of view, kind of revolve around this idea that the items that we're working with can't be behind a gate. They can't be gatekept. We need to be able to have access to the parts, the manuals, the resources to be able to kind of build upon these things so that we can keep doing what we're doing. And there's different ways, like, you see companies now, like some of the bigger distributions are now putting out, their computers with, Ubuntu or something already installed on it, which means that this computer probably will be able to run most, Linux distributions without any issue. And that's really important for things that we kind of want to be building towards in the future. So, if I'm looking at, like, I don't know if anyone wants to start their own kind of, like, charitable or not-for-profit refurbisher, but if the one thing that you kind of want to look at is this idea that, like, the advocacy for around the right to repair, it ties into what we do at Free Geek. It's not something that we're gonna, we're not an advocacy organization. We are, a frontline practical organization. Like, and most of the time, I think everyone in the organization, including myself, would more enjoy sticking their head and arms in a computer rather than going to advocate at the to levels of government or something like that around active repair, because in the end that's kind of what we want to do. But like that idea of the right to repair is kind of really the key piece to this, because the more that expands, the more that kind of allows for the bigger amount that we can do. So I know that was really quick. I was trying to get this done in about 10 minutes, so I'm done. I'm going to leave this open for questions. I know that there's a lot of gaps in what I said and didn't say, but yeah. So let's figure out what's next.